Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I thought I'd seen Pam, but now I don't see her anymore. Yeah, I'm moving. Yes, and I'm moving the mayor over to panelist. Uh-huh.
Hey, Jennifer,
Yes.
it won't let me start my video.
Oh. Maybe it won't let anyone start their video. Let's see.
Mine's working.
Is it? I don't see you though, so maybe
Oh, you
not.
don't see me? No.
There we go.
This is
Allow
weird.
panelists to start video.
There I am.
All right.
Join.
Yes, join.
Steve.
How's everybody doing?
Wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful. Locked in.
You locked in?
Locked up. I don't know.
Yeah, yesterday is the first time I ventured off my walk path. Well, I went back to my old walk path, but got to get back in the swing of things.
Well, I had a unique experience this morning. Monday morning, I lost one of my crowns. It came off, didn't lose it. So I got an appointment with my dentist this morning, went in at 7 o'clock, and I was very impressed with the way they operate that place.
Yeah,
Very impressed.
my dentist said, I think they're only allowing 2 in at a time. They'll walk out and get you from your car. And, they give you a mask and all that good stuff. I mean, you only have the mask on about 2 minutes because they got to take the mask off to get in your mouth.
Yes, but they keep theirs on.
Oh, yeah, they keep theirs on. Well, my dentist always did wear masks. All of them did.
Yeah, probably a good practice.
Well, you might as well get used to it because I think that's going to be the common standard around here.
All right, I think everyone is here. I've got a couple of cameras that aren't on, but yeah, and Laura and Neil, but Neil's might be off for sound purposes. I don't know.
Jen, you can recount the bird experience.
Oh, I'm sure that if there's video footage in here, they can recount it later. It's a good time. We had a bird in the chambers. Well, we had a bird in City Hall that got in the chambers later.
Oh, wow.
My sister has fortunately worked with songbirds and helped us get it out.
Did you name it?
We just screamed a lot. All right, so yeah, I think you guys are ready to go, so go ahead and get started.
Okay, so let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. And I don't think we need to do a roll call on this. Do we have a lot of, yes, we have 42 participants. So there are a lot of people on this session, I believe. Our first topic today is the selection of the city manager search firm. And we've interviewed 4 firms. I thought I might at least start quickly by asking Steve if he has any comments about, I see his eyes getting big. The most important thing I think here is which of these firms is going to bring us a good set of candidates. And Steve, if you have something that you want to add to this before we talk about the firms.
Well, I think they'll all bring you a good set of candidates. I wouldn't have recommended those firms. I think you made good choices and they did good jobs. I would tell you that you shouldn't necessarily adjust your expectations to any of the firms or the flashiness of the firms. if you hired all of them and asked them all four to bring you 10 candidates, when they got here, you'd probably end up, if you put them all in a pile and lined them up in one day, you'd probably only be interviewing 15 people. They're going to bring you a lot of the same folks. You can't manufacture the candidates in your basement. I don't want to badmouth the St. Louis area, but it's not a hot spot for my business. It's not the home in any way of my business and so forth. And warm weather and certain things just attract a lot of people, and people tend to get in St. Louis and stay in St. Louis. So, you know, your pool is going to be. I worry a little about some of your questions and what your expectations are. If you look around on your own, and I'd really rather not speak to details, but of some of the recent searches here or the ones that are going on now, you're going to find a lot of folks in those finalist pools that don't match with some of the things you've been asked. I think one of the candidates, I can't remember if it was one of the firms, Ralph Anderson or GovHR, said that if you listen carefully, that you know there's a finite group of people that are attracted to this area. All that said, you know they're good firms, but there's nothing magical about how this will come out, assuming you're looking for the best candidate you can get, and that's what you have in your head. So, you know, I know stuff from the firms, from the searches around here, but I don't want to talk about those kind of details, and I might be off. And it's nothing bad at all. It's just I would maybe temper those expectations a little bit. If you think there's any firm that magically will bring you an army of people that we excuse me, struggle to bring into this business. It's probably worse than when I started. And that includes massive efforts to bring diversity to this profession. It's just not that attractive to a whole lot of people. And you have to have a bit of a nomadic spirit, and they're just, not everybody's built that way. And so that's about all, Jerry, that I think I would say.
Thank you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the firms. The first one we interviewed was Novak Consulting. Positive, negative?
I can start. I really liked it. The presentation that Catherine put on, and the subjects that we talked about, and the questions that were given to her, that the responses that she had. I'm very high on her, especially on the part where they address diversity in a very thorough and detailed way.
Okay, anybody else?
Do we know, it was unclear from my own notes, do we know that Catherine would lead the search for us?
No, we don't. We don't.
I agree with Bud. I was very impressed with Novak and their results, minority hiring. It appears that, you know, it's a continued effort for them. Good presentation. They have some experience in the area. I think it was Clayton and Chesterfield, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember how long ago it was, but you know, they have some experience in this area. I think this is the one that gave us a 2-year guarantee in the event that we have to do it all over again.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any comments about, yes.
I would just add one thing. I thought the discussion of the interaction with council staff and community and gathering input was good in that presentation as well.
Agree.
Ralph Anderson? No comments?
I think Ralph Anderson, they lack experience in this area. I believe all of their experience was in California and Texas, if I remember correctly. If as a choice, I think they were my number 3.
HR Gov?
They were my number 1. I just liked the way they described the process, and I think I was impressed with Lee's background and what he offered as far as their placement of diversity from that company. And their fee seemed in line with the others.
The other thing that stood out, I'm sorry, David, stood out to me was, and I can't remember whether it was in their packet or was discussed, is the number of repeat clients they have certainly bodes well for them.
28%.
Yeah.
David, you had,
They were also my number 1. I thought they were the most attractive, and I thought their systematic approach seemed much more in line with what I would like to see. I thought Novak was my second, so, but overall, I liked HR Gov the most.
I'll
I
add,
I have them as my, Gov HR as my second choice. Very close though.
Yeah, I agree. It was close. They do have experience here in the metropolitan area. Wildwood, U City, Maryland Heights, Ferguson. So that's good.
I'm going to ask one question, and this isn't meant to be a negative for GovHR. I'm curious, especially Jerry and Steve, since you've done these kind, that the fact that they have an open search going on in Baldwin, should that make any difference to us in how we approach this?
I would think it's a positive because not only have they done Baldwin, but they've also recently done University City. They have a number of them, and I think their specialty is the Midwest.
So it's not a matter then of them being competing searches. It's tending the same sort of ground.
I will
Yeah,
add,
that's a plus, I would say. And I have some belief that they have Baldwin went through this and had a manager that with a short duration, and now the old manager who was there forever is back as the manager, and now they're doing the search again. And it's my understanding they have a decent pool of candidates, and that's good. I mean, he will have seen them in action in around here and try to match that up with your personalities and your goals, and it may be helpful, not harmful.
I can add, I think HR Gov was my first choice too. I went through the list of the kinds of searches they had done, and they were the ones that had done so many city manager, city administrator searches. Plus, we experienced them. I was on the committee where we hired the director of the Municipal League, and they really did a good job. I thought they did a good job. Okay, then anybody else? Then let's talk about Slavin. I felt badly because there was poor Bob in Atlanta in his attic at 10:30 at night. And perhaps if they had been 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it would have been different. All right, we've been through these. I'm hearing at least 3 of you think HR Gov is the first choice. Would that be all right, or do you want to talk anything else through?
I could support that too. I mean, they're very close. They're my number 2, but there's some good points that Steve just mentioned too about what they already know about the district and the area and the candidates in this area. So it's a big plus.
They have a good reputation. If someone would want to make a motion that we hire HR Gov.
I'll make that motion that we hire HR Gov.
Second.
Gov HR.
Well,
GovHR.
let's just, could we please make that rank them first? And do I take that Novak would be ranked second, perhaps?
Yes.
Yes.
That's my
Because
opinion.
you'll need to hire them. And so what I'll do, my best is to get a contract on the next agenda. And if they can get me a draft contract quick that meets everything they said in their submittal, because I assume you've reviewed that, you're okay with the prices, the conditions, and so forth. If it matches all that, even if it's just an additional item that we bring up late, I'm going to try to bring that to you next Tuesday so they can kick off and get going, if that's okay. So you'll need to adopt a resolution to engage them. So I don't know, just being a wonk, Neil, probably, but the action would be the ranking, because later you'll approve the actual hiring.
Okay. So Bud, can you restate your motion then? That you would rank HR Gov as in first and Novak for the second place?
Yes, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we offer HR or Gov HR first and Novak as a second.
Second.
All right. Jen, you want any discussion? Jen, you want to take the vote on that?
Oh, sure. Mayor Welch,
Yes.
Councilmember Belomo,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right, then we will, Steve, if you can get that moving along, I think this is a good choice. They have a great reputation, so. All right, so now that takes us to our second, which is the continued discussion of the proposed fiscal year 21 budget. And Steve, I think you, Joanne, who's going to take the lead on this.
This will be a lot like Slavin's presentation, because I haven't seen it yet.
But you're not in the attic.
Well,
So-
we're just, yeah, right, you're right. Yeah. So what you're going to see is if you bear with me a little bit, we've just gone back at your direction and looked for more. Joanne is going to have to help me in a couple of spots here because I've forgotten what a few things are. But so what I'm going to give you is a list of additional cuts that we suggest. So I'll go through those line by line. If you remember right, based on our projections, which some of you have a bit of a doomsday view, so that may not provide much comfort, but that's what we're going off of, that we had a budget that was upside down general fund wise by some, what was it, Joanne, 800 and some thousand?
876,000.
Yeah, 876. So what, at the end of this, we'll add all this up and I'll subtract that and show you. So I just want to run through here some other stuff we've thought of that have materialized since your budget work session and so forth. One of those is, I hate to show you our working papers, but the executive compensation is a reference to me being out of here and you not paying this salary for 3 months. That's not that, but it's a portion of that. If you interview all St. Louis candidates, then you won't have to pay a lot of travel and hotel expenses. But if you bring people from other places, you will. And so we've left money there that from the salary account that can go over into the travel, stuff like that. And just trust me, that's salary, benefits, and everything for me at a rate at the beginning of the fiscal year that you won't fill this position July 1st. So, so that's what that is. We had 25 grand in. That's really vector money for a PR firm there. We've taken $5,000 off of that. It remains at 20. We're taking a flyer that we don't expect the community connection on paper to revive. So that's a bit of a bet, because that's what that's the costs of putting it in there on its monthly basis. The tuition reimbursement, as you know, we have a deal with Webster University and our employees can go go to Webster University, but we also don't compel them to, of course. And so we've always budgeted a small amount of money that goes for tuition reimbursement for classes, very few, as you can see, that are not Webster University related classes. We took out all the employee celebrations, so that's your holiday party, your picnic. There we have one a year, and also a pittance that goes to a little Halloween thing that goes up here for 45 minutes in the council chambers on Halloween. I took out the membership for Town and Gown, and it could go under miscellaneous, but it's there just so I don't get accused of hiding it. The HR Tyler Technologies is, just interrupt me if I'm wrong, Joanne, this is the annual conference, right?
That is correct.
And we send people this because it keeps them current on upgrades and stuff that are going to our financial system. Add anything you want, Joanne.
This would be for our HR specialist, and there's so much that they learn at the conferences. And so if she had attended, she would then share it with the lady who does our payroll and also the gal who supervises her. There's just a lot that they learn at these conferences. And so that's why it was initially there.
So we had tried to leave that in there and we took it out. Go do the next one for me too.
Okay, and so this next one is also with the same company that owns our accounting software. It used to be called New World. Now it's called Tyler Services. And they have an accounts payable purchasing card item that we were hoping we could purchase because it would make it a lot easier for us with our credit cards. Right now, it requires hours for our current accounts payable person to enter all of the information on the credit card if she did it per the detail that we would like. And this module would just help tremendously with that.
Keep going.
Okay.
Did we take the MDTs? Did we just cut a few out? Is that what that one was?
So this one, our IT manager indicated that this was just a matter of where they were wanting to replace printers, but this could, we could push this off for another year.
Just stretching the life.
And that's the case with the next two items also, that our IT manager oversees: the network management software maintenance and the SIEM log management maintenance. So again, those are punts. We really need them in the upcoming year, 2022, since we can't have them for 2021.
And so that's the kind of stuff we're going after now. We just got to stretch the use of that software a little longer. Next would be the boards and commission receptions. That's Poetry Week promotion, Awards of Excellence, and Lifetime Achievement in the Arts programs. Court clerk, we had a part-time position in here because I think you all have a general sense of what Show Me Courts has done to us without consultation. So there are consequences to that and certain rules we're supposed to follow. And so we really needed another part-time person. It's a long sharing of responsibilities kind of story. We're just gonna have to live without that. But that was the remaining thing we had in the budget as far as a body went, and it's gotta go.
Could we go back to the other two board and commission items, please?
Oh, I skipped them, didn't I? The additional support hours. That is, what's her name?
Fran,
Fran, that's Fran. That's not all of Fran. We still have money in there for Fran to support the taxing districts and business development commission interaction. But there were some additional things, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that we were going to add, enhance a little bit. It still leaves roughly in there what she was paid for the current year. So current conditions could continue. Additional enhancements would be unavailable. To remove the video, that is Creative Entourage. can you speak to that, Joanne?
Yes, so this was a new item that we were going to put in the budget. The Business Development Commission was very interested in this. And it would be where Creative Entourage would interview a business, one business a month, and they would speak about why they moved to Webster, the great things, all the positives about Webster. And we thought this might be a great way in which, one more way in which we could promote Webster, and we're going to put it on Facebook and all the other social media avenues that we have.
What other social media avenues do we have?
All of them?
Well, so on our website, it would, on Explore Webster Groves, and any others. We can do more. We have opportunities to do more if we choose.
Go ahead.
So that's all I have on the remove video. Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody asked last time about Slate going up 20% just for property. That's industry wide. We've been with Chubb for a long time. I didn't forget anything. It wasn't addressed at our last meeting. They're trying to get get those down and shop it, but apparently it is across the industry. But we did get a decrease from the money we had in there of this amount. So it's down in the teens as far as an annual increase. That is unusual. The police overtime is for community days. We went back and got that. The next few items, well, Dale, are you on there? I thought he was on.
I am. I'm here.
No, Dale.
Dale. Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve. I'm here.
Oh, that's okay. Is the CALEA I know they postponed the CALEA conference or pushed it back into next fiscal year or something. What's the latest?
Well, we still will have to go to a conference. They have quarterly conferences. And that was budgeted. The conference we were going to is in November, but it's pushed back to the spring. So we still need it for next year. What that is, we'll have to make a decision in the spring. If I or our accreditation manager will go, but we need to send one person, but we had budgeted for two. So we took out the second person. So probably will be our accreditation manager rather than me that goes.
It's kind of a big deal. They work, there's a lot of work that goes into it in-house, and they send people that are with us that ask a million questions for days on end, a panel of people. And so when you succeed in getting your CALEA certification renewed, it is typical to be gracious and to go to the conference, and for the police chief and your the administrative person that helps put it all together.
Right. When we get our assessment, that's a kind of a pre-approval. Their recommendation is that we be approved. But the conference, where we go to the conference for is, that's where the board, the CALEA board actually meets, and we sit, probably takes about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, where they go over the assessment, ask us questions, and they have actual final approval. I mean, to be honest, it's kind of a rubber stamp, but there have been cases where departments have not been granted their certification, even though the site assessment was successful. So you do really have to go, like I said, at least one person, because you do have to sit before the board to answer questions on your site assessment.
And Chief, the police personnel equipment and municipal jail services, is that stuff that we've switched to the asset forfeiture fund?
The personnel equipment is asset forfeiture. The municipal jail services, we will be more as judicious as we can about availing ourselves of jail services. It's a slight reduction based upon our experience in the past. We try to budget to make sure that we don't go over budget, but we think we can probably stay within what we have budgeted. But again, as with a lot of things, it'll be cutting it close.
The forfeit asset forfeiture fund is a fund that's unreliable in its steadiness, and so it's hard to project. So we don't do a lot of budgeting of that. The intention of it is that it goes for exceptional items that you wouldn't otherwise purchase, right? So that's the intent of it. And so that's what we do with it. It's not a large amount of money. There was a big redesign of it here recently. So there were quarter after quarter that no revenue was received and so forth. But we're taking just a minor flyer and transferring some stuff because I think we can legitimately say there's a few things here. The training and the equipment that wouldn't be purchased because of our financial situation. And so they become exceptional purchases, and we've moved our hope to purchase those things out of the asset forfeiture fund. Wait a minute, I think I missed some there.
I didn't mean to do that.
The license plate reader maintenance is just a suspension of that for a year. That's what the software, that's what the contract costs. We'll still have the hardware. We wouldn't have access to it. Again, this is the kind of stuff we're looking for now. That's a valuable tool. I certainly wouldn't call it a luxury. It's integrated with surrounding municipalities and data is shared about, where you could track, for example, the repetitive location of a particular license plate somewhere where crimes had occurred in multiple municipalities and so forth. But it's not an absolute necessity. So
Why can't we share that with another municipality that already has it? Why have we contacted, say, I don't know what other municipality has that, but have we contacted them to see if we'd be able to share it and share in the cost?
It's not an asset sharing tool. They're on individual cars, and each one requires a maintenance contract for the software and to participate in the system. You can't really share it because it's on individual cars. One, like for instance, the one at Maplewood isn't going to help us because it's not going to be here in Webster Groves, and their officers are going to, not be in our car. So it's not something that it's not really something that we can share as far as an asset.
we would have to pirate software, and that's not a good look.
So this is hardware that we already own. You just need the software to keep it going. Is that correct?
Basically, yes. It's the software and access to the system. I mean, technically the software is going to sit there still, but we won't be able to utilize it because we won't be paying for the maintenance and licensing fee.
All right, thank you.
The fleet tracker GPS maintenance contract, can't remember, Dale, is that something you moved?
That's something we are eliminating for the year.
Okay.
What is that?
Each car is equipped with a geo-positioning system where we are able to track where the cars are at. Again, the hardware will remain, but we won't be able to access the system because we won't be paying the licensing fee.
Dale, it's Jerry. Isn't that necessary for 911 to be able to track those?
It is not.
Okay.
Where are we? Police training. Was that something we moved, or did you just adjust?
We just adjusted it based upon our experience. Again, the specialized training. We'll be able to do our normal post training, but some of our specialized training, some of the things like where we get to send some officers, I think that I'd mentioned before, to special conferences or special training, that won't be budgeted. We won't be able to do that.
Likewise with the fire training, Mr. Yohe coughed up a couple of grand. I forget the fireworks story. With all the fireworks talk and contributions and or the donations and the New Year's Eve thing and so forth, somehow we missed that. So we found that. So that's just in line with what you were talking about. The next couple are just a strategy to save money. It's not eliminating positions, but there would be less part-time positions filled. you know, there's always some turnover and that kind of stuff. And it puts some of our more middle management types on the front counter. This goes on in other rec centers, and there's nothing bad about that. We're just stretching personnel a little farther that way and taking away some of the part-time salaries. We typically replenish the skating supply, sharpen the skates, making them last longer. Medical insurance, just with each passing month of the year, we can estimate better the coming bottom line for that. So Joanne's comfortable with taking another 20 grand off of that. And the miscellaneous is a series of $100 here and $50 there purchases for fuel on down. Not stuff we can make up. It wasn't done indiscriminately, but it is just what it says. It's nothing that negatively affects you or the municipality or our service level. It's just being tighter. And then correct me if I'm wrong, Joanne, but this is the Chapman thing contributes to lowering your deficit because we did not have it in there as a revenue, and the way it's going, it looks like we'll be able to get that from them next. It'll go on into next fiscal year. So sort of an oversight, but anyway, that's an offsetting thing too that will help close the numbers. All right. So we started like at 876. What you just saw is 277 and change. So it drops the number of, you still got proposed up there, down to a little under 600. There's a couple, now it gets a little harder. 107 is the non-uniform, non-public safety employees, the elimination of the January 1st pay increase, which you recall at the middle of the year, subsequent to employee evaluations. And based on those evaluations, in a tight span, we had budgeted 1.5%. The very best employees could get up to 2.5%, and those less so down to 0.5. If you get 0.5, there's a big message there. But anyway, that's how we operate that on a little bit of a curve. That's the impact. So that's the only savings you would have that affects the general fund if you eliminated that. I'm not really suggesting you eliminate it. I'll elaborate a little bit. It's in the fire contract. The police effect of removing that is another 117.9. That would not boost your general fund. It would boost the public safety fund, the Prop P fund, if you will, that was taking a big hit this year. It would boost that back up a little bit. It was unclear to me at the last meeting how many of you were interested in pay reductions. So I have not asked the fire department, if you will, if it would be in their good nature to also cough theirs up. And so that would be another number similar to in the vicinity of the police number. There's two ways to do this, of course. We can take this out of the budget. That lowers your deficit to the number you see. Why am I pointing at my screen? You can't see me pointing at my screen. That would lower the deficit if you did that to the general fund to under $500,000. It's obviously somewhat of an estimate, but that's where that would go. If you take it out of the budget, I would strongly encourage that at mid-year, we'll do the evaluations anyway, but that at mid-year you revisit that, you look at the coffers, you look at how we're doing, you look how everything is tracking. You've already committed to doing that quarterly, if not more. You'll get a feel for how it's going, and that you consider reappropriating that. The other way to do it is to leave it in the budget and then just not authorize it to be administered until you approve it. So that wouldn't look good as on paper. It would come out the same. Those are options for you. Next page, please, Joanne. I beat on some of this stuff and I didn't get a lot of legs, and I do want to remind you just one more time that it doesn't take a whole lot of help. And I know some of you think our estimates are too generous for sales tax. I have no compunction about the balance of them, but for sales tax, so that doesn't completely salve your conscience, but there's still stuff out there that will happen that has the potential of happening in the next fiscal year. We've gotten, if you're tracking it at all, the Department of Treasury, Federal Department of Treasury has made their position clear, and it's looking more like that some of the CARES funds will indeed be shared with the municipalities. We should know that just around the corner. I, of course, can't over-promise that because it's still in Dr. Page's ultimate hands, I guess, but I know there's been a lot of effort to get clarity on that, which he seems to have accepted. And
Steve, can I ask a question on that? If I remember right, the county got about 175 million, and that was by county per capita statewide. And if one were to assume that proportionately can be distributed amongst the municipalities on a per capita basis, our percentage of that would be about, I think, around $4 million. Do you find that to be true, or am I way off?
I haven't run those numbers because I didn't have a lot of faith until the last few days that it was actually going to come. That seems hard to believe. It would need to be a reimbursement for actual expenses. So far during this crisis, we have not expended that much in public safety or other related things. The rub has been whether it could go towards reimbursement of funds already budgeted. And the wrong-headed thinking was, no, that's not what it's for. Well, obviously, all those budgets are taking a big hit. So it's replenishing things that are definitely related to the crisis. But boy, Bud, to make a projection of what I think will actually come across, that'd solve a lot of problems if it was 4 million, but I wouldn't rest my laurels on that.
I understand that's a big hope, but and as you said, it's based on reimbursement for COVID-19 expenditures lost, and boy, sales tax taking a big hit, other things taking a big hit, recreation taking a big hit because nobody can go to recreate, maybe even as far as utility tax might even be hit by that. So declines in all of those revenues are directly COVID-19 related, and I'm sure we could put together some pretty significant numbers.
Well, we already have, and we're tracking it. And there's, just to be honest, it would allow you to reboot. I mean, it solves the problem. And, kind of also, I don't know if I get tired of watching news channels, but there is a lot of talk that another federal stimulus package would tip its cap this time to state and local governments. So there's some potential there. I want to remind you, as probably most of you, Emerson especially, wouldn't even know this, but you fight every 3 or 4 year battle with cell phone companies because they lose the court cases and they give you a bunch of money, and then they just fall back and they come up with creative ways to dent what they have to forward onto us. Dan Vogel, who's been successful with us in this regard and has a relationship with our municipality and lots of others for the last 15 or 20 years, continues to pursue this. Nothing's materialized yet, but just to be honest, he's always delivered before. Usually it comes in the form of some sort of settlement and reestablishment of what they're supposed to pay. It's gone farther this time than ever before, but there's an excellent chance that that materializes to some degree. It usually materializes in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm just putting it out there, make you feel a little better about your future around here. I want to reemphasize one more thing. We've done it. We've showed we can do it. And we've never, I've done it in multiple years where the books don't look quite right. And I start telling my staff, let's be tightwads a little bit towards in the last quarter. And department directors will call and say, I got this slot. I can leave it open for a while if you like. And I say yes, or I say no, depending on who it is. If you keep your eye on the ball here, I want to emphasize your staff is talented and creative, and you can, if you start earlier than that, continue to make budget adjustments that leave positions vacant and so forth, and the money piles up. You can react to revenue that doesn't come in as you project. There's one more thing, and we've spent one of the reasons this is a little scruffy is because we've spent the last hour and a half trying to figure this out with Scott. Even though there's been talk about the pools, the actual guidance did not come down until this afternoon. And it appears that June 15th opening of municipal pools are in play to a capacity of 25%. And we're just not smart enough to put these numbers together. We've tried, but it messes up the projections we gave you before. Scott had done a bunch of work to try to help figure out where this goes, and it was kind of the staff anecdotal perspective was maybe 40% of people at the pool as we had in the past. Now it would be less than that. So those numbers don't work anymore. We got to do more work on this. Would like to put him on the work session agenda next Tuesday night, where we can be clear and give you final say on whether to open the pool or not. If you choose not to open the pool at all, there'll be some savings there. The pool's not an enterprise fund. It doesn't pay for itself. And there will be some savings there. I just don't have a decent number for you, and I don't know what it will be. It won't be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It will be tens. The revenue goes away as well, but all the expenses with the contract, the lifeguards, and all that goes away also. So there'll be another adjustment here that may very well be to the positive. So that's another little wild card. So that's what we've been working on, all of us, and that's where we are at the moment. You may want to back it up a little bit, Joanne, and
Steve, before we move on from the pool,
yeah,
I understand, it'll save costs and things of that nature, but I also want to make sure we factor in the safety value of our residents and the employees that'll be there. Will we be able to sustain all of the criteria by the CDC and efficiently operate the pool? And I just don't want to make it a money-losing proposition, but I want to keep employee safety and resident safety in that equation as well.
Well, I will tell you that much of it's low key and not truly life-threatening, but the lifeguards pull people out of the pool every year with some frequency. Not newsworthy, but there are events. How you have that kind of interaction, I'm not sure. Scott was on the phone after the guidance came from the county this afternoon with all of the pool directors. I want to give him more time on this. If I was a betting person, if you can get him to tell the truth on next Tuesday, I don't think he's on here, I hope not, next Tuesday at the podium, my guess would be he will tell you he'd just as soon not open the pool. There's benefits. I know it's on Facebook and all this stuff, but the pool's essentially done by August 15th. When you head back to school, it really peters out, and nobody's buying memberships or any of that kind of stuff. So we're now talking about a 2-month window of the pool being open at 25% capacity. Figuring all that out, just what you said, Emerson, we're running water numbers and electricity numbers. That's all the kind of stuff we're trying to figure out to help you. But I think, I don't think you're going to see a lot of them open up around here.
So Emerson, I actually looked at them, and that Scott will give us a much more thorough presentation, but there's a lot of thought into how to do this, and it makes everything really complicated. So I'm glad that Scott's going to have some time to sit with it and figure out whether it's really workable or not. The finances are important, but can we do it safely is a separate question, which I'm sure he is trying to figure out right now based on those guidelines.
Yeah. And I would appreciate if his bottom line is that he don't recommend to open the pool, just go ahead and make that recommendation.
Well, I appreciate you asking that. I feel you should ask your staff those kind of questions. That been in the business for a long time. You know, Mickey wants to make everybody happy. It's going to be hard for Mickey, right? It's going to be hard for Mickey to say, no, don't open the pool. So it's hard. It's hard for all of us. It's what we do. And the joy you see is rewarding. It's like the ribbon cutting when the new playground equipment comes in, you know, but it's going to be a tough call, and you need to hear about it, and you need to help us decide. So that's kind of where we're at. The budget hearing will be next Tuesday, so we have more time. So we ask for your input here, your gut feeling, things you hate, tell us you want to put back in, blah, blah, blah. But I hope you see that we're digging down into things we're not entirely comfortable with. You can't cut gas and paying your utility bills and all that kind of stuff out of here. And you indicated a preference for not laying folks off. We can judiciously use staff. And
Steve, I want to commend you and Joanne and your staff for working so hard on this. I know this is painful and it's not easy to do and present, but you've really done a thorough job of digging. So I very much appreciate it.
well, I came into this business out of graduate school when the buzzword and what they spent a lot of time teaching us in the early 80s was cutback management. That was the thing, because those were hard times. Like the .com crash and like 08 and 09, but cutback management. So I'm winding up where I started. But please don't lose sight of the potential for good things to happen. It feels so gloomy and doomy, but some relief may be around the corner. I'm as worried about what the world and what our coffers look like a year from now as I am in the immediate future, because you can't be certain it all comes back. But you know, how do you play that? You know, how do you play that? Prognosticators are abound all over your television screen.
So on that note, and I share Bud's thanks for working so hard to find some more savings. I'd be much more comfortable moving forward if we had, as a council, an actual schedule of, on this date, we're going to review our revenue and make some decisions about what we're thinking. We talked about quarterly. I'd like frankly, I'd like a timeline. In Bud's words, the Gantt chart kind of thing. When are we going to actually look at these things and make some evaluations about whether revenue is coming forward? Because you all have done a good job of finding some more money. I would like very much to support our staff as much as we can, but I want to make sure that we are really paying close attention to being sure that we're not in a bigger hole than we think we are.
Well, the clerk's here and Joanne's here. I mean, just make a commitment. I remind you that the July and August revenue doesn't mean much, right? So you might want to time it a little bit, but yeah, you just every 2 months or something, put it on your work session agenda. Just schedule it and just book it, and that's the way it's going to be. Katie keeps a tickler file. She'll put it in there, and it will just magically appear. I can tell you, Joanne will be doggedly monitoring it anyway, and there's every reason for, in these times, the elected people to know what's going on. So I'm sure that's not going to be a problem for you.
Can I ask maybe if, because Joanne is so close to those on a daily basis, that 2 months sounds good, but maybe Joanne, as she sees things developing one way or the other, can maybe advise us to call a work session or put it on a work session and do it at that particular time, whether that be 1 month or 3 months or whatever it happens to be.
I'm going to echo this, setting up a schedule, which I think is a great idea. The other thing I'd like to be able to do is not set up the expectation that you will get this particular salary increase or whatever it is, but rather for us to evaluate that every couple of months. I'd feel more comfortable because it's easier to give somebody something than to take something away.
So when you
I agree
imply,
with that.
and when you say evaluate, does that mean you're going to commit to taking action every time you evaluate, or it's going to be kicking the can down the road, or?
Well, you just got to see what the status is at that time and make some decisions. I mean, this thing is so unknown. And, you know, my philosophy is in situations like this, you plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yes.
And make adjustments as you go.
So Jerry, well, my question was to you was going to be then, are you okay with the partial increase at the beginning of the fiscal year and then we're waiting on everything else? Or are we talking about the entirety of the salary increase?
I don't know. I think that's open for discussion. I would prefer hanging on to that middle of the year to see where we are, because I don't know. I mean, if life goes really well, then that's fine. But if it doesn't, it's hard to take things away from people. It's hard to get to January and say, whoa, we're an extra $1 million or $2 million in the hole. Now we have to lay people off.
I mean, I guess I'm going to risk getting an eye roll here, but I mean, if you operate that things are going to be okay, things happen. And I think, you know, I kind of agree with Steve that things have a way of working out. I think what if we did the reverse, where we say we're going to do a salary increase and review it at the half of the year? At least you're keeping morale going and you're helping plant the seed that everybody has to work hard because possibly this won't work out. I mean, I think that's the way you motivate. And I just think the cost of morale may outweigh the dollars, at least right now.
I support, you know, our first responders and making sure they're paid equitably and fairly. I guess my question, Steve, is that if these increases come to pass, will that put them in the position of being competitive in the market, or will we be faced with this same problem again next year? Will it be adjusting their? I noticed on your information that you sent us, we have a minimum and a maximum. I don't understand why we don't have a medium, but where do our staff fall in those guidelines or those salary ranges where we want them to fall? Do we want to be 90% of the mid-range or 110% of the mid-range? And where do all of our staff, especially our policemen and office workers, the non-uniform, fall in that grid? Because if we're just making a Band-Aid now, next year we're going to be faced with the same thing. So we need to increase probably the minimums, mediums, and maximums grade levels where we hire them in at, so we won't be behind the 8th ball and trying to catch them up.
Well, I think the answer to all that was in the complex materials that we sent yesterday that David had asked for. So if you look,
and that's why I said I saw we have a minimum and a maximum, but where do our staff fall in those ranges? So if I looked at a 5-year patrolman, same criteria, would their salaries be alike?
No. I mean, that's not an easy question to answer. What is being proposed to you in the budget places our employees in a satisfactory place in that that range. Or we don't go ask the employees, for example, do you want to be third in the county or anything like that. That's not how it works. It's sensible numbers that bring them up. They have your employees. Seem to like to work here. It's a decent place to work, I believe. We try to create an environment with some dignity, and they don't. None of the public safety people run around demanding they be the best paid in the county. That's not what we get. What's happened is that the Prop P money's been handed out, and it is it's a nationwide thing. But you know, when something like that happens, and we made some modest adjustments for police in the last couple of years. But now the survey data always trails and so forth, and you look at it and it's sort of suddenly shocking. And what that means is it's finally been passed out and shown and contributed to sites where that data is collected, blah, blah, blah. And so now we see we're far behind and we need to do something fairly dramatic. I don't think that will continue to excel at that place, but you have police trailing fire and you have our police trailing other police, and we need to be fairer about that. And that's what our effort is. And all I can tell you, Emerson, is it puts them in a reasonable location if you abide by what our recommendation has been. Now, if there's if everybody, let's say we're one of the 2 states that don't get any sales tax from Amazon, right? Let's say that all changes and all of a sudden there's a windfall and some of these little towns around you are being run by the public safety people and they all get big raises again, then you have trouble. You keep chasing. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen.
You nailed the problem on the head though, Steve, right? At what point do we no longer chase? Or at what point do we decide as an entity that this is unsustainable, that it's hurting our own citizens? I'm not advocating against the cops here. I'm just making the argument right now for all the employees of Webster Groves. Like, I agree with you. Like, we are below the threshold at every level based off the data that you've sent us. But I just question what are we doing to change this? What are cities? What are we doing?
I have an answer for Emerson. I'm sorry to interject, but at the 5-year benchmark for police officers, if you look at the mid-range, you can actually figure it out. And that's where one of the real problems comes in, is that we are 10,000 lower than the next 3 departments up, 11,000, 12,000, and 13,000 to the next 4, and we are 17 and 18,000 behind the other 2. So I can promise you, our officers are not looking to be the top paid department in St. Louis County. We're not really not even looking to necessarily be in the top 5 or 10. They're just asking to be somewhere comparable, because we do offer the environment, better benefits. And I understand the difficulties here. Other public safety have gotten there, and they just feel like they've fallen so far behind that they would just like an adjustment to get within a reasonable distance of other departments. But the 5-year benchmark, we're $10,000 to $18,000 behind other departments.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. Because if we don't start looking at that right now and making a correction, we're going to fall farther and farther behind. So, we need to know what those minimums, maximums, and mediums are. Adjust those and adjust the officers to where they belong within that grid.
Chief, so we make the correction now, then in 3 years when the next municipalities go up, are they going to, it's not going to be based off of performance. It's not going to be based off of anything other than the fact that we're trailing.
But I can't, I can't prophesize what's going to happen in 3 years. I think the result of the big difference now, because the city has done a really good job of keeping us comparable up until the time of the Prop P funds. And I think what's happened, and Steve articulated that, was that those funds have been delegated out over the last couple of years, and it's caused for that disparity. I don't see cities, giving tremendous raises from where we're at now. So I don't really see us trying to play catch up all the time. I think this is just an adjustment based upon what happened with the Prop P that's happened over the last couple of 3 years. And again, the other factor is we don't have to be in the top 5. We don't have to be the top paying department. But if we get so far behind that the people from the 1 to 5 year mark, and that's where a lot of the big disparities at, aren't going to find it palatable to stay here when they can go someplace else and get that kind of a pay raise.
Historically, where's Webster Groves ranked with other municipalities in regards to pay, not just with cops, Steve, but with all employees? Especially in your 20 years, like, is this a new phenomenon where we are playing catch up continuously, or is this been a continued phenomenon where Webster Groves is playing catch up?
No, it's not a continuous problem. We review position by position, and we make little tweaks within pay ranges. You approve the pay ranges by resolution at the or ordinance along with the budget. That's in the charter. That's why you approve those pay ranges. We move the pay ranges a little every year based on that across the board increase that comes July 1st. And so we've always moved the ranges a little bit. And for your typical anybody else outside of public safety, that's fine. It moves along. You don't find clerical people or planners or Parks and Rec employees getting quite the bumps that you public safety people get, nor do they, they have dedicated taxes now. There's a fire services tax, and there's our voters adopted for us, and Prop P, that focuses on that. Like I said the other day, we're talking now. It's not like the setting out front in a wife beater with the Dalmatian beside you anymore. These are college educated people that are highly trained, and our police officers come out of the academy skilled and with high grades and high recommendations, educated as well. So they deserve what they get. All you got to do is.
I'm
Right.
certainly not saying that.
But
I'm just more concerned, Steve, about the long-term consequences of what we're doing in St. Louis County. And here we are in Webster Groves where we have the funds to be able to pay our officers, and we're still behind. And my question is a broader question: is what are we doing to prevent this? Because to me, this is an unsustainable path that we're heading down, where we're going to continuously tax our citizens in order to keep on playing catch up with our neighbor.
If I may, David and others, it comes down to one thing: revenues. If the revenues don't increase, you can't increase anything else. And when
you can increase taxes.
when I get into my charts, yeah, you can increase taxes, with voter approval. And try that. That gets real popular, doesn't it?
Prop P passed pretty overwhelmingly.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, firefighters and police, the county supports them all the way. But I don't know if they'll take another one, especially right now. But at any rate, if revenues don't increase, generally across the board, we have 5 different revenue funds coming into the city. And the charts I'm going to show you here in a couple minutes, or whenever I get to it, will show you the problems that we're facing. So it's pretty hard to talk about increasing pay for anybody beyond what we have revenue to sustain.
David, if it makes you feel any better, this is the same narrative that's been going on since I got here. And
that makes me feel worse, Steve.
That makes me feel good. Yeah.
No, I can't fix it. I can't fix the county for you. Why would you think I can fix the county for you?
I'm not asking you to fix the county. I'm raising the question because our citizens deserve to know the problems that are associated with a fragmented county. And that's why I'm raising this issue. And I'm not saying, and our officers and our firefighters and our city employees deserve to know why we are at this juncture right now. And I don't think it's discussed enough. And I don't think that it's debated enough. And I don't think that in the local councils it's debated and discussed enough. And I think this is my opportunity to do it. And that is why I'm bringing it up.
Well, you are correct, and I can't guarantee you there is a ceiling. If you look at what some of the districts pay their firefighters, I can't tell you there's a lot of informed taxpayers out there keeping an eye on it. Therein is your problem. Jerry's going to speak up here any second, because your problem is outstate legislators. Again, we're one of 2 states that the sales tax just keeps going away due to the internet. And somebody, but our streets that we pay to pave are covered up with delivery trucks from those entities. I mean, that would be very helpful, because you're right. How many more taxes can you pile on people and all that kind of stuff? That's fine, but I'm sorry I don't make you feel better. I'm just trying to tell you to hire a decent city manager. We've always made this work. There is value in creating a dignified work environment. There is value in not throwing out the insurance, okay? We provide good insurance. I have fought for that, bobbed and weaved, and fundamentally everything that goes into creating that rate is the same since we got here. We do other things we can. Your public works people have to not drive vehicles that there's smoke coming up through the floorboards. We've made it work here. It's not the end of the world. You're right.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
chasing it. But if you put back in the money we should have had the coronavirus not struck, we wouldn't be in quite this bad a shape. That's driving a lot of this conversation. I don't have any dough right now.
Steve, just so we're clear, I don't give them the pay raise. I'm not advocating against the pay raise right now. What I'm advocating against is the fragmentation in St. Louis County. And this is my opportunity currently to raise this issue and to demonstrate to the citizens of Webster Groves why it is so bad that we're fragmented. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I'm okay with what your budget has done. I've read through it based off of what you now presented to us. I think this is a worse budget than the one that you've initially presented to us. And so I'm okay with us using our reserves in order to go forward with what you initially had planned. I'm just saying this is my avenue right now to demonstrate where I think that we're going to go to an unsustainable position. And so that's all I'm speaking on.
Okay, David, on a broader scale, regionally, that's an interesting message. I can tell you what I think is going to happen. We have the luxury of having some reserves to fill in here. Many of these cities do not. And so they're facing a situation where they don't have money to pay those police, fire, and other essential employees. And that, I think, is going to cause some structural changes in the long run in this region. It's my response, David.
Well, no, and I appreciate that, Mayor, and I think you're absolutely right. The question is the question is who benefits from that structural change?
We'll have to see what happens with that structural change.
Consolidation.
It may force some communities to work a little more closely together.
That would be absolutely wonderful.
Well, that's also the question, right? Is it going to be active decision-making, or are some things going to fall apart? And I think that is really critical. And we are in a position to be part of the active decision makers, I think. And it's important that we, when we can, take on that role.
Okay. Steve, anything else from you? Or
no, it's as always, it's easier to get the books right with your input now. So if there's things there you just hate, tell us and we'll put it back in. David just said it's a worse budget before. That's not what I was trying to do.
I don't mean it like I mean like I favor your initial budget over this. I think that the initial budget, based off of what you've came back with us and the potential cuts, I'm okay with us going in the hole based off of what I'd rather us not see us do, which is this.
This one is just more grim.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you expected. I will just, since I'm got not much to lose anymore, go out on a limb a little bit. I would be contrary to Jerry, I'm just going to speak for the staff. And it would be more inspirational if you leave that money in there, Jerry, and that you have to do something hard down the line. I know it's hard, but that's why you make the big bucks. You asked for this, you don't have to be here. I would leave money, and it doesn't cost you anything to leave that mid-year bump in there. And if you have a story to tell that the sky has fallen, these folks are smart. If they see that happening around us and everybody's in that same boat, they'll accept it. They'd rather have to some degree have cars replaced and so forth, but they'd rather have that than the holiday party, I can tell you. So I would leave that in there and put the burden on yourself. Now, I'm no politician, but that's what I would do. If you have to go back and put it back in, you'll start 6 months worth of rah, rah, rah. We'll never see that. They just took it out. I'm just afraid that's what will happen. Believe you me, they're paying attention. And, it's just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have low turnover here in that shop because they want to stay here. And I would do whatever you can to inspire that and put it on yourself to do something hard at the turn of the year. But that's easy for me to say.
Well, I'm very open to hearing everyone's thoughts on that. The one thing I would not want to do is to separate any pay increase for the uniform versus the non-uniformed folks, because I think if we're going to give a pay increase to police and fire, we absolutely need to give it to every employee. So I noticed in this particular budget, the one thing that you took out was the mid-year salary increase for the non-uniformed folks, and I wouldn't support that.
No, only that was when I just wanted to show you the nuts and bolts 300 grand we came up with, and that's just into the category of additional stuff you can do. That's not the recommendation. That's not my proposal. My proposal is you leave it in there. But
okay.
I think you're absolutely warranted to study that and to study that with frequency. And it's okay that they know that might go. Again, I'm telling you, they'll know that it's faltering all around them, and they'll accept that better if you take it out. And I beg you at all costs, do not separate the public works guy that's plowing your street in the middle of the night from the public safety employees.
Exactly.
They're all valuable. Parks people are underpaid, all that stuff. That's how that works.
Exactly.
Do not create a caste system. When I got here, that's the pay plan that had been adopted. There was double-digit increases going here, and there was fractions of a % going to the custodian. And that's wrong, and it's detrimental to this service environment. I beg you not to do that.
Absolutely.
If I could, Mayor, maybe getting into these spreadsheets, if I could show those, it might inform a little bit better and help us come to a conclusion here.
We'll need
Okay.
Joanne's to stop sharing before, there we go. So now Bud should be able to share.
Let's see here. I think I have to get something off my screen here first. Let's see here. Get this off. Oop. It's on. There we go, I think. Okay, can you see that chart?
No.
No?
Share your screen, Bud.
Did you click the little share, the blue share at the bottom?
I did, I thought I did, but let me go back and make sure. Can't get anything to work here.
Let's make you a little more sympathetic to Mr. Slavin, bud.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not an addict though.
You're in a baseball.
Let's one more time here. Share screen.
And then choose your program and then share.
Is it showing now?
Yeah.
I
Is
just-
it on
I
your
just-
desktop, Bud?
I just selected it. Yes, it's on my desktop.
But press, you see the little, are you on a Windows
Here,
computer?
right down here.
There you
Okay,
go.
now-
There you
You
go.
got it? Okay. Okay, let me, before I get into these a little bit, just take a few minutes. I just want to say that I really appreciate what Joanne's done. I mean, and the people that have helped her put this thing together. They do a tremendous job. And the more I looked at budgets, and I went back to 2014 to put some historical information together, as you see from this first chart, and going through this budget, it's a tremendous job to balance this thing. And it's just outstanding. So I don't want to take any, I don't want to take this as being critical to anything. I just want to show what's factually correct. So if we look at this one sheet to start with, it shows all revenues, funds, and all expenditure funds for the years 2014 through the current proposed budget, which is this last column over here. But to draw your attention to two things, I did a growth rate projection based on 2014 to 2021 and saw these growth rates, but realizing that 2020 and 2021 are going to be distorted by what's happening with COVID. So I just did another one, a growth rate to be more realistic to what's happened historically, 2014 to 2018. And I came up with these growth rate changes. So we can see revenue funds growing at about 2.1%, expenditures growing at 1%. So that would tell you, well, we're spending less than we're coming in. Well, it depends on what that percentage is of. If one is bigger than the other, it's going to be more dollars, obviously. But there's some good things here to look at too, that this is just, it just gives you a kind of a view from 30,000 feet, what could be and what actually is. So if you look at the general fund, which is our biggest fund out of the five, the revenue is growing at about 1.53 up through 2019, and expenditures at about 1.18. And overall, our expenditures are growing significantly less than all other fund revenue. Now, if we look at the chart based on the data in the spreadsheet, this is what it looks like. If you look at right here in the middle, this is the general fund. And you can see it's balanced pretty well all through the past, all the way back to 2014, except for what we're faced with now in 2020 and 2021. But if we look up here at all funds and all expenditures, you can see there's a gap. So this blue line here, this is the revenues, and the red line is the expenditures. So you can see most of the time over the last, out of these years, the four out of the 6 years, or 5 out of the 6 years, we're spending more overall than we're bringing in. Now, how do we do that? Well, we do that because we have good balanced fund revenues. So let me move on.
That's the all revenue though, right? But is the red and the blue?
Yes, this is all. Okay,
All right.
all revenue and all expenditures. So the red, like for example, right here where the pointer is right now, that's 2014, 15, 16, $24,575 in expenditures. Revenue was,
Joanne, correct me if I'm wrong. You've explained the differentiating thing though to us, where why those numbers might not always match up.
Yes, I attempted to, but there may be some, because we have 14 funds.
Yeah.
So it's a bit confusing. There are big number differences. For example, in 2019, you may recall that we did what's called a defeasance, and we paid over $1.7 million in debt service. So that's why the debt service fund is down so much, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of fluctuation in fund balance on that alone.
Well, we'll get into those charts that show fund distributions where funds are transferred between two different funds. So those charts will show up here, but this is just the big picture. If we go down a level then and look at the funds by name, okay, there's a chart down here, but let's just look at the top half of this spreadsheet and focus on these percentage changes, growth rate changes for each of these funds. And you can see there's some things that would draw your attention, like grant fund. We did a tremendous job getting some pretty good sized grants in that period, growing from back in 2014, 95,000, growing up to well, pretty close to 300,000. Then it's some other things that catch your attention, like this one is a minus growth rate for street improvement fund, not a minus. So I'm not going to get into any detail on this. I'm just going to say this can lead you to some other questions, peel the onion back another layer type thing. The bottom part of this now is the chart. And we could see the ending fund balances over this period of time. So here's where we're projecting. So all of these are based on the projected budget that we saw last week. So none of the changes that we saw earlier in the presentations tonight are effective here. This is all based on what it was without any changes. So if we look right here, this is general fund ending balance is the blue bar. Debt service fund ending balance is the red, and special revenue is the gray, or the gray. Capital projects fund spending is the orange color. Pension fund spending is this lighter blue, and then the total ending fund balance is the green. So you can see how we've tracked over the years, pretty steady up to, you know, between 18 and $20 million. And this is all funds. Now we're facing this dilemma right here. So I'm going to move to this one, and let me see if I can slide this over. Your pictures are blocking some of the detail. What I did with this one, and I'm just going to talk about it briefly here first, because I want to go into the 5 funds to show you the fund changes. But what I did here is I just took the actual budget as proposed. So all of the data here goes back to 2014. That's as far as I could go back online to what's posted online. It'd be easy to add to this backwards, but this gives us a pretty good picture historically over the last few years anyway. So here's the dilemma we're facing right now. Now we know in 2018, that's when Prop P kicked in, and we also changed over to loggers. So you'll see some differences there.
No, that's not correct.
What's not
We
correct?
switched over to loggers in 2013.
2013? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know where I picked that up. I saw that somewhere and I just copied it over.
But the voters did approve an increase to the police and fire pension.
Okay. Anyways, this is the real data from those budgets. So what I did to look at is what if scenarios. What if things go south on us? We expect they are going to go south, but how far south? So these are the numbers that are projected as the budget proposed sits right now. It shows us with a net loss of a little over $6 million to our funds, our total funds. So we'll go from about 20 million down to about 14 million as projected right now. So I looked at all the funds to see which ones could possibly cause the worst downfall as far as projected revenue goes. And I looked at sales tax, which is a big one. Okay, so that's our biggest single fund is sales tax. And looked at, and the other one I took was recreation. This is recreation. Let me slide this over so you can see it. Recreation fees. So those 2 funds I looked at, and I left everything else the same as what's in this column right here for the budget. So the yellow numbers in, I projected at what if we look back at 2019, which was our last normal year. What if we only got 95% of the revenue projected? Well, that would drop from 8 million down to 7.7 million, for example. And what about in recreation fees? Same thing there. Instead of 2 million, 95% of the 2 million in 2019 would be 1.9 million. What's the overall effect? Well, you can see that increases our deficit by about another $440,000. So this is the bottom line effect that it would take then on our fund balance, okay?
But does this decrease expenses with the lack of expenditures?
It takes it as it's projected right here.
But
So
just so you recall, in
What it was
2021, we have budgeted a significant amount of money for Firehouse 2 of about $5 million. So that's a reason for a significant amount of the reduction in fund balance.
Yeah.
And
that's
just,
the
if I can insert
start-
just one thing, just really quickly. With the budget, it's just 1 year snapshot. So when I'm showing you information, I'm just showing you 1 year's of revenues and expenditures, generally speaking. I mean, you'll see 5 years with the actuals and everything. But sometimes if we also take a peek at the CAFR, that might be helpful too, because that also has the balance sheet in it, and it shows receivables and payables and the long-term debt also. So that might help clarify a little bit too.
Mhm.
Sorry, Bud, go ahead.
So this just goes 95%, 90%, 85%, 80%. Okay, and this is like the doomsday scenario. If we lose 20% of our sales tax revenue over the next year, and 20% of our recreation fees over the next year, it would drop our fund balance down to about $12 million. This, by the way, these numbers down here are relative to gas tax, which is another thing we get from the county distributed on a per gallon basis, 17 cents, I think, a gallon. So this would add a little bit more to the deficit. So this number, in other words, is 13.6 million with a lower gas consumption by 5% over what it was in 2019 would make this net case on the fund balance down to 13.5 million. And that's just how it shows. So these numbers, but when I put the formula in there to calculate this number, it put a negative sign on it, the parentheses, but these are not negative numbers. That's what it would be with the gas tax included with recreation fees and sales tax. So that's not touching any of these other numbers as Joanne has them forecasted. Now, it could be that, some of these others could be affected as well. I don't know. So I just took the two biggest that I thought would show the biggest problem.
Well, can I ask a question? The chart is slid to the point that I can't see. Even in your doomsday scenario, we've got an end funding balance of about $12 million. And that represents roughly 50% of any year. So even in the doomsday right now, we still meet our policy recommendation for a fund balance. Am I reading all of this correctly? I don't know whether that's a Bud or Joanne question.
No, let me tell you what the issue is the $5 million for the firehouse. That's the whole difference in here, because the $5 million for the firehouse, if you take that out all along there, it makes it a little more neutral. So if you get to 2021 where you have a deficit or a fund balance reduction of 7.968 million, you really should subtract the 5 out of there for the firehouse.
So we would remain then
at 7
well
million.
over our recommended general fund balance reserve.
That's not correct. That's not correct. Look here at 2019. Okay, our fund balance before the proposition that gave us $5 million for the firehouse, our fund balance was 18 million.
Right.
18.8. 2018 it was 20 million. So we were there. Now this 20 here took into account that $5 million that we got for the firehouse. So this is still going to be the bottom line. The bottom line is still going to be based on this, right, based on these projections, the bottom line will be 14 million if we hit this budget as projected here in this column.
But let me insert that with our fund balance policy, even if we use the budget that we presented to you initially, the proposed budget, we would have had 53% in our fund balance.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes.
So how does that then relate that to me for Bud's worst case scenario, if you might? That's another, what, almost $2 million. So that would take us under 50%.
Yes.
I'm very bad at doing math in my head. What do we think? Is that 45%?
I can.
No, it's, here, where's my calculator?
Sorry, I pushed that off on someone else.
Well, it depends on how much the expenditures are going to be. Are we cutting the budget by the expenditures for the general fund, or are we keeping it the same?
Actually, that's a good point. No one do the math for me. It's fine, because if we're in this doomsday scenario, we're going to adjust across the year anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's really going to be, you know, we had some discussion on it already, and I agree with Steve on this, and that one option would be to leave it just like we have it projected here, just like we have it here, and just see what happens as we go. We know that, you know, if things look pretty good here, they're probably going to look pretty good here. If not, that this may get better, it may get worse, but nobody knows. There's nobody that can predict exactly what's going to happen that's going to affect these big funds. We know there's going to be some effect. So are these numbers going to be good? And so that might be, we just stay with this thing as it is, which includes the pay increases. Correct, Joanne? It does include the pay increases? The 2021 proposed budget?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So we just leave it as it is. And look at these. Maybe this, well, we know that, you know, we're already talking about the swimming pool and other things that could affect rec center. This is the big one. We don't know what people are going to do. Our economy, our GDP is over 70% consumption. And if people change their spending habits, even for a short period of time, 6 months, this number is not going to be 8 million. Like this right here, we're still showing 8 million projected in sales compared to just about what it was in 2019. That's probably not realistic.
You know, but I appreciate what you've done here, and I think this is really helpful to understand and to move forward. I would say this. I am advocating on one end that we need to figure out in St. Louis County how to consolidate and how to stop this fragmentation. I'm going to advocate on the other end now and say Webster Groves is demonstrating during this pandemic the importance of planning, the importance of saving, the importance of ensuring that their employees are well maintained and well taken care of. We have the money, we have the ability to do this. We are not in a predicament where we have to cut. It seems to me that if we're gonna be that shining light to demonstrate how St. Louis County should operate, I think this would be a good example in setting an example going forward of how St. Louis County should, a municipality in St. Louis County should operate, which is they have the ability and they have the means to withstand a pandemic like this because of good judicial and or judicious planning.
I will say I do not have a problem going ahead. I prefer the budget that came with the cuts to moving ahead. And I also appreciate seeing this outlined, Bud, because already you can tell from my questions, it's helped me understand a little more. I would like, and we've already said we can do this, I would like an actual schedule that tells me on each date, this is when we're going to do our review of where we are with revenues and expenditures. It would comfort me to know that we have a calendar that we'll stick to, not that other items might come on the work session agenda, so that we can, you know, take a real look at where we are. I take the mayor's point that it is very hard to say, actually, sorry, we can't really give you that money that we hope to give you. But I also do understand the point that's been made by several people that we need to support our staff.
I'm with David.
In life
Okay,
and everything?
We can have Katie prepare.
No, just, I think we, I'm completely fine. Well, I am fine with adopting the original budget with the caveat that we will review it and maybe be willing to make cuts later. And I'd rather do that than adopt the revised one that we've looked at today. But if the consensus is to take the one that's from today, I wouldn't say no.
Okay, this is the general fund balance over the last 8 years. And again, all this is based on the budget as projected originally. So we can see what's happened to our general fund, okay? It's gonna take a projected hit of over $3 million out of our general fund. And that's going to be partly offset by a transfer in, okay, from other funds. So this is the
And the
net
transfer
change
in
that's
actually
occurring.
covers it, Bud, so that it would be considered like another revenue.
Yeah, I'm just showing the effects of moving
I
money from one.
understand, but I just don't want it to be
fund the other.
misunderstood. That's the only reason I inserted that. Thank you.
Okay, and all the rest of these charts. So there's 5 funds here. Here's the debt service fund. So the debt service fund is one fund that it doesn't have transfers in or out. And I assume, Joanne, that's by regulation that you
The
can't.
debt service fund is for the general obligation debt. And so no, you can't take money from or put other
put
money.
in.
I mean, we
Okay.
could transfer money in from the general fund, but you can't take money out except for
Correct.
the general obligation debt.
Correct. So you can see there's no red bars on this, but you can see what's happened over the history. One of the things I'm trying to do is get to the point to where in the budget itself, and others know that I've advocated for this before, but haven't been able to substantiate the value of doing it. Our budget has a real good section in it called revenue narrative, okay? But it doesn't include expenditures. And my thoughts are that we can enhance that section by including expenditures and together with revenues, so that the documentation that shows historical change, what caused it, is it good, is it bad, what was done about it, that's what's done in the revenue section right now. And it's pretty nice. But it paints a picture because there's graphs in there as well. When you just look at a set of numbers, you can just go goofy just looking at a set of numbers and try to figure out what's going on. When you put it in a graph like that, it makes it much easier to understand and look at where the issues are. What happened, for example, in 2019 here. Here's the special revenue fund, okay? And you can see transfers coming out, growing, and going to other funds, which is okay. It's perfectly okay to do that, but you just see the effect of it. Here's the capital project funds change. And again, taking the big hit here, but you can see a trend over time of what's been going on. The pension fund, another one of those funds that you can't take any money out of it, can't move it around. I guess you could put more money in it, but relatively stable. And then all the 5 funds put together, this is a summation of them. And you can see where we're at here. And this shows us what's going to happen based on the budget as it's proposed right now. So again, I would sure hope to get to, well, let me just explain this here. Not a big deal here. There's just some numbers different, like the ending fund balance in this year should be the same as the beginning fund balance in the following year. And there's some changes there. Some are a little bit more, some are a little bit less. I just highlighted that because I wanted to find out more, but go back and look at it later. So again, this gives us an idea. And if we go back to this chart here, again, I would suggest that we just leave it like it is right here and keep these in front of us And we could play with these numbers as we go. We can take this higher, take this lower based on 2019, or based whatever we want, and see what it happens to the bottom line.
So could I go back just for a minute to Laura's recommendation about the reports?
Sure.
Yes, yeah.
I generally look at them on a monthly basis, but then I create a quarterly. And I think that after the quarter ends, I'll just work with Katie and Jen to put an update for a work session or I think it would work better on the work session. And then we can discuss on a quarterly basis. Does that sound okay?
I think that's a very good idea, Joanne. And I think it needs to go on the work session and not just as a handout, but it needs to go before the council because this is really critical. You know when you get sales tax information. So I think Laura's idea of setting up a calendar based on when you get information is something that would be a nice piece to come with Tuesday's budget presentation. So if you could do that, I think we would all feel better about it.
Yes, I can do that.
You can do that. Okay, great.
And
All right. Yes.
One quick thing, just to clarify that the original proposed budget was, Joanne and Steve were taking COVID into mind already and had made, worked with department heads, et cetera, to make cuts. Correct?
That's correct. We had already.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Here's where I think we are at this point. Let me see what I can do to summarize and then see what other questions we have. First of all, thank you to everyone. You have all done a marvelous job. Steve, going back and finding all those additional cuts, whether we use them or not, thank you for doing that. Joanne, as always, you're really on top of things. Thank you, Bud, for all this educational information that has benefited us. So here's what I think. We're going to get a calendar, and that'll come along next week with the budget hearing. 2, I'm hearing that everybody is okay with salary increases. So speak up if you're not. Okay, so Steve, I think that we're telling you that the recommendations that you made for the salary increases are fine with all of us, me included.
Could
Okay.
we get Bud to exit his screen there so I can see everybody?
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, wow.
Okay, so so I think again, we're all okay with salary increases.
Yep.
Me also, please don't, anyhow. And the only thing that we really need a discussion on is now we have 2 budgets. We have the original budget that you proposed, and then we have the budget with the cuts in it that you worked out for the last couple of weeks or week or so. And I'm wondering where the council is on this, and what recommendations, Steve, you might have made. Do we go with your original, or do we go with some of these cuts that you have proposed?
Take the cuts.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's going better than you think, and I share your nervousness about the future in sales tax. So maybe we weren't aggressive enough, and I would err on that side as long as you can keep the fundamental support for salaries and health insurance and salt and fuel and utility bills and all that kind of stuff. It's just a rough year, and staff will adjust to those cuts. If there's anything in there that you particularly agree, just sure, put it back in. But that's my advice. We not just because we piece this all together, but we can do it. We can do whatever we have to do. We know what's most important, and you know what your greatest resource is. So you stay in that spirit. Take the money and run. That's my opinion.
So what we can do is we could go back and restore, if, for example, we get a share of funds from that county $175 million fund, if they decide to allocate some of it. And by the way, I wanted to mention to you that it's not a divide it all up per capita, but what they're talking about now is that if they're using any of that fund for police and fire on a county-wide basis, then they ought to be also using it for the municipalities. So it's getting really complicated, but that, I think that's where they're going with this.
And just so you know, today we received a reimbursement from St. Louis County for some of the police protective equipment through the CARES Act.
Great, good.
So if you get a check, a big checks, you'll end up amending the budget. So you'll
Yeah, and
amend the
putting some of that
revenue
back in.
side, and then you can discuss what perhaps we cut out that we might most need. With an eye to the future of the caution of what future sales tax is going to look like. Right now, incomes are up, right? But unemployment's down. Well, that's all when the supplemental stuff that unemployed people are getting goes away, and that's all going to reverse, and incomes will be down, and unemployment will be up, and so there is. You should meet frequently and review what's going on. But
We will do that.
we won't begrudge you those cuts we just put up.
Well, it sounds like we've done a lot of work today. I think staff, Joanne and Steve, you're okay?
Just for clarification, so Steve, the cuts that you proposed at the beginning of our discussions today, you're going to go ahead and take those out, except for the pay increases?
I would just ask my opinion. I'm not sure you're all on the same page about that. You need to wrap that up, because our presentation will reflect wherever you leave it today, unless we have more bright ideas.
And you're recommending, Steve, that we leave those cuts that you just made in the budget, leave them as cuts, correct?
It's
It's
yes, I'm sales tax nervous like council, and I don't mind you erring in that direction a little bit. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we all came back and said, good Lord, sales tax held up real nicely. But it's okay to be cautious at this time. Yeah, that's what I would say, but it's not up to me. You can see it. You can read it. Do whatever you want.
Is council okay with leaving the budget as proposed, the second budget, with the cuts, leaving the cuts there in the budget and evaluating what we can restore as time goes on with those quarterly reports? Is that okay with you all?
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Take them out, except for the pay increases.
Yeah, except for the pay increases.
We appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Anything else that we need to talk through or work through before Tuesday?
Where can I get a haircut?
Come on over. I've got a pair of scissors. You can look at Pat's haircut. You will not want one from me. Anybody else?
Wished I had your problem, Steve.
They look like Marty Stewart or John Mellencamp or something like that.
Okay, Dale, do you feel a little better?
Yes, I appreciate it. I know the officers will appreciate it.
The officers will appreciate it.
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks.
So we're all okay with this. And Jen, you'll get your salary increase.
Oh, well.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Bud. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, council members. Good job, everybody.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Way to go. Good night.
Bye.